Mr. Ali Reza, I want to ask you, and for your advice also, the recent attacks on Turkey has been claimed by the Turkish government as done by ISIL without ISIL claiming responsibility. Is that unique?
It is, because normally ISIL claims such atrocities almost immediately. But this is not surprising because in the Turkish context, because this is the fourth attack that has been attributed to ISIL by the Turkish government, which ISIL has not claimed. So it is an unusual occurrence that this has happened without ISIL claiming it. But nonetheless, it is an interesting moment in Turkey's attitude towards ISIL, because more and more the Turkish government is saying that it will be targeting ISIL after having long been somewhat negligent on the threat posed by the radicals who've been fighting in Syria.
Mr. Bicher, we understand as long as the Turkish government is concerned, the latest attack was done by a Saudi Arabia passport holder who lives in Syria. So it seems a lot of names, sensitive names of countries have been mentioned in this regard. Very interesting situation, isn't it, if claimed as by the Turkish government?
Actually, we can say that too many players, role players in the conflict area, not only in Syria, but also in the Iraq and all the Arab Peninsula, we can say. Particularly the actors from out of the region are playing very dangerous role in the region. This is a power struggle. This is not able to. They are not able to balance the powers in the region. They play the very dangerous role, and they will be affected by the results of their this dangerous role sooner or later. Believe me.
Mr. Bicher, let me be a little bit clear with you. When you say this is something as a power struggle, and players coming from outside the region are really behind this, who are you exactly referring to? If you can be a little bit clearer for us, that will help us in the analysis. And also, what do you think is the role of the Turkish government in terms of this global fight against terrorism, ISIL included? Is Turkey, with the recent cases, in some interesting, sensitive, if not challenging position considered by the majority of the international community?
Think about that. If you want to see the position of Turkey, it is better to look at the map. You see the very interesting position, very strategic position of Turkey on the map. From Balkans to Caucasus region, from Black Sea to hot waters of the Mediterranean, East Mediterranean, and particularly Middle East. Turkey living in this kind of struggle location. So Turkish government insisted their position, defined their position from the beginning of the Syria crisis against the Assad regime and the behavior of the Assad regime to his own people. So there is no change. Turkey against all the global terrorism, international terrorism, including ISIL, including the PKK, a terrorist Kurdish organization as well.
All right. Mr. Ali Reza, when I asked about the question about Turkey's role in some of the recent events in the region, it has been a very interesting one for the international community, even for our part of the world as well. Especially when you think about the political ego, as some term it, of Turkey right now in the region. Mr. Ali Reza, what do you make of that role? How would you, observing from Washington, look at that role?
Well, I mean, we can talk about the outside actors, but I think we really should focus on what the Turkish government has been or has not been doing since the beginning of the Syrian crisis. The Turkish government did indeed focus on the ouster of Bashar al-Assad and his regime in Syria. At the beginning, this was supported by the Western countries, but more and more, the Western countries have drifted away from that position to the point that Secretary Kerry, John Kerry of the United States, was able to say in Moscow towards the end of the year, after meeting with the Russian foreign minister, that the ouster of Assad was no longer a matter of priority. The priority has now shifted in Washington and in the European capitals, as well as in Moscow, and I would say also in Beijing. I assume that that the main threat is posed by ISIL and the other radical organizations inside Syria, and that's because they are carrying their fight away from Syria itself into Europe, into Turkey, and elsewhere. And yet the Turkish government still insists that the focus should be on the ouster of the Assad regime. And even though it is now, I would say, belatedly focusing on the threat posed by ISIL and other radical groups in Syria, we haven't talked about them, but they also constitute a threat. And it's to be welcomed that the Turkish government is doing this. But I wish they had done this long ago.
Ms. He, things Mr. Ali-Reza mentioned about China and some of the others, what do you make of how the world is looking at Turkey now, especially its role against ISIL, despite the fact that this administration has been talking about ISIL as the enemy, and yet not long enough, as Mr. Ali-Reza charmingly put it?
Yeah, I think comparison with other countries now fighting with ISIL, now Turkey has something very special and different with others. The special and the difference is because Turkey now is fighting in the two fronts. So one is fighting with this ISIL. Actually has been regarded as a very reluctant fighter with the ISIL. And another front is fighting with the Turkish Workers' Party that is called the PKK. So for quite a long time, I think the Turkish government has regarded as this fighting with the PKK as the priority, even more important than fighting with the ISIL. So that's why it has been called reluctant fighter and also reluctant partner with the leadership of the US-led coalition fighting with the ISIL. That's why we have seen a very strange phenomena. That is when the ISIL and also those very Sunni extremists are fighting almost across to the border to the Turkey. And then the Turkish soldiers just watching and around the border, so just watching the fighting going on. So I think because of this, that's why when those terrorist attacks happening in Ankara, even in the last October, that caused lots of casualties. And this time around, even though the ISIL hasn't been claimed the responsibility, and the Turkish government immediately saying that has been done by the ISIL, because they don't want to say if this something has been done by the PKK. So that's the thing they don't want to see, because domestic conflict now will cause the instability for the country. So I think if there is a threat coming from the outside, that will give another reason for the Turkish government to give like the bombing, the ISIL, and then to show their new attitude even to the United States, saying now we are moving forward.
I see.
We are joining this fighting.
Mr. Bishir, if I could use that word, interestingly, that it has been mentioned by several international media news reports, Turkey has been this suspicious partner, many regard as, in the coalition against the ISIL fighting, against ISIL rather. I just wonder, to what extent do you think Ankara would win others' confidence and others' trust for its credibility? To what extent do you think Ankara has already made its decision that they understand the issue of ISIL and it is determined to put it as a priority, not preaching one while doing the other?
Okay, first of all, we have to separate the apples and the others.
Okay.
Turkey against the terror. This is clear that Turkey against the global terror, international terror, because Turkey is suffering from the terror for last 30 years. Spent more than 100,000 people died because of the terror in Turkey. And the main origin of this terror is PKK terrorist organization. They are now in the Syria, in the Iraq as well. They are using all the sources of these two unstable countries, Iraq and Syria. And they are using ISIL struggle as well. Turkey's position is clear as far as they declared, the government declared that there is no difference between the ISIL and the PKK. We are struggling against the all powers in the region who they are fighting against their own people, including Assad. Turkey supported only the former Syrian, the Free Syrian Army members. They, with the coalition, with the United States as well, they trained them.
All right.
They supported them. They logistically aid them. It is clear, but ISIL was not a part of this coalition.
Okay. Mr. Ali Reza.
So Turkey can confident the coalition what they are doing. It is very clear, and Turkey proved it.
Okay, Mr. Ali Reza, your comments here. Has Mr. Bashir really separate the apples and the pears, or actually he had been putting them all together?
I fear it's the latter. Turkey has a legitimate fight against the PKK, and it is one that the United States and Turkey's other allies are supporting. But for better or worse, at the same time, the United States and Turkey's other allies want to focus on the immediate threat to the international system that ISIL constitutes. The PKK is a threat to Turkey, and Turkey is fighting it. But ISIL is a threat to the international system. And there is a coalition headed by the United States which is fighting it. Now, it may be argued that this is clear, that Turkey's position is clear from its point of view, but it is far from clear when you look at it from the outside world. There have been accusations of negligence, and maybe even more when it came to the radicals inside Syria. And that issue is, as I said before, no longer confined to the Syrian conflict. It is spread beyond Syria's borders into Turkey itself.
Right.
And the sooner the Turkish government actually identifies this as the more immediate threat and focuses on this, the better it would be.
Before we go, also some question for you specifically, Ms. He. Earlier we talked about the Turkish situation, but at the very beginning we also mentioned the recent bombing inside Indonesia, in Jakarta. It is the biggest Muslim nation in the world. So also claimed responsibility by ISIL. How much danger do you see? The spread of it is now in Asia, our home turf.
Yes, the thing happened in Jakarta, Indonesia capital, I think is more threatening even to our Asian people, because it's not far, and I have been traveled there by myself. So I think this is an increasing danger, this ISIL. When we have been fighting for such a long time, and then we haven't seen the distinction of this evil, and then it's coming spill over not only in the Middle East, and now goes to the Asia and goes to European country. So it once again, those bombing here and there, once again show to us now this is the immediate threat. No matter what kind of country, where it is, you're located, you have to regard this ISIL as the immediate and the priority threat you have to deal with. Put your national interests besides, and then regarded this as the priority. Otherwise, maybe your own national interests will be hurt by this evil.